it's that. Yeah, that is the surnames in Iceland. It's not our names. It just indicates who either that we're daughter of our mother or father. I want to start by thanking the organizers for inviting me to chair this important conversation: allies in action, men, masculinity, and fight for equality. We started yesterday with a strong message of the importance of this topic from our President Halla and Gary. And there were a few things that I took with me, and I think it's very important to focus on the things that we do have in common. We all want to be seen and valued. We definitely don't need a gender war. We need more inclusiveness, and we need to think about how we create a society where all, despite gender, can thrive. How can we do that together? Not in silos, not women against men, but together. So Dominik, I want to start with you. How can we develop a narrative that sticks and is an actual counteroffer to the dominant narratives that currently stick and are challenging progress in inclusion?
Thank you for that question, and thank you for having me on this panel. I think the last 1.5 days have shown that the narrative is changing already, and we were reflecting on it in the green room when we started here in Reykjavik with that forum. And you know, I've been an observer for a couple of years now. The discussion was different, and I think this year you can really tell the difference in talking about the role of men and boys and the necessity of bringing them into the big tent and making them part of the movement and part of the change going forward. And I think one of the issues we observe, and we've talked about this in various conversations around social media, and the gap in the narrative that is taken up by the so-called manosphere and, you know, these influencers where people who feel, and I purposefully say people and not men because I think it's broader than men, people that feel left out and that feel left behind find false comfort. And I guess doubling down on young men and boys is crucial because we saw in Michelle's presentation yesterday that the younger generations are seeing a re-traditionalization in their view of gender and gender norms. And we need to counter that. And we need to come up with a narrative that sticks and that is a counter-offer to what we currently observe. And I wanted to offer sort of 3 pointers. I don't know if they're the best ones, but they came to me when I was engaging in those discussions, and I hope they are a start. One is about reframing men and boys as co-beneficiaries and not obstacles. So men thrive when equality thrives, and I think we need to really put that together and transport that message across all dimensions, emotionally, socially, professionally. And there's a link to social cohesion, there's a link to mental health, disenfranchisement, and identity. The second one is around building positive, inclusive, masculine norms. And in the spirit of power of words, what we heard before the leaders' talk this morning, I'm not going to use words in this context around victimization and toxic masculinity because I think they are wrong and they already put us into a category and into a framing which is not helpful in that discussion. So building positive and inclusive norms where masculinity doesn't mean power over, but power with. And I think it's quite important. And the last point I want to make is around creating structural and symbolic partnership opportunities. So boys and men cannot just be an add-on to the women's efforts. And I think there was a UN commentary a while ago which said that the socialization of boys is one of the most powerful yet underutilized tools for advancing gender equality. And I think that's very true. So 3 ideas.
3 good ideas. Thank you so much for sharing them with us. Richard. You mentioned in a breakout session yesterday that even though Iceland is number 1 when it comes to gender equality on many parameters, there are others that we are maybe not as good on, and you told us that we have the biggest gap between boys and girls in higher education in favor of girls. You also told me that you would like to expand the gender equality movement to include men, not only as allies to women, but beyond that. Can you explain for us what you mean by that?
Sure. Again, thank you for having me and for having this conversation, which I agree is very important. And I also just want to agree with Dominik. I think getting past deficit framing is very important for everybody. And I think if there's a tendency sometimes to talk about men, if we're not talking about men as allies, we're sometimes talking about them as the problem rather than as having problems. And of course, both of those things can be true at once. And so I think we're at a moment for the gender equality movement, which is strategically incredibly important and incredibly difficult, which is the gender equality movement a women's equality movement, which would mean you would carry on measuring the ways that Iceland, where women are still behind, but you don't measure the ways in which men are behind women in Iceland, as that report does not. And my view is that, I like this co-beneficiaries language, is that too many boys and young men now feel as if the gender gaps that they're on the wrong side of, if you like, are not ones that the gender equality movement is addressing, because the gender equality movement is focused, for understandable reasons, on women and girls. So we've either got to decide to have continued work for women and girls, women's health, women's leadership, etc., and then alongside that we're going to have work on boys and men, men's health, male employment, boys and men in education, or, and maybe it's a gender equality movement that genuinely does both, and that looks at gender gaps both ways, and that says there are many, many gender gaps where we still need to do a lot more for women and girls, and we've just been hearing about many of those today. And we are also concerned about the mental health gaps, the education gaps, and some of the ways boys and men are struggling, and the gender equality movement expands to include that. This is a difficult time to do that because of the atmosphere around this conversation, and I understand the temptation to dig in and to say now is not the time to be focusing on boys and men, given what's happening. We should double down on this being a women's movement. I think that would be a strategic mistake. I think that, difficult though it is, we should expand, and that we should make boys and men feel more included in this movement, and that will take some of the fuel out of some of the reaction that we're currently seeing.
Thank you so much. Heiða, the mayor of Reykjavik, mentioned that the difference between boys and girls are at least partly because they are shaped by the society. And when I was listening to Nicola Sturgeon and Katrin Jakobsdóttir yesterday, I wondered, why is it easier for women to bring topics like gender equality, climate challenges, and well-being to the agenda? What do we need to do to make it easier for boys and men to embrace these topics and make them like something that they would like to participate in and put on the agenda? Would you like to share something on this topic?
Thank you for the question. So one thing I must say also, as an individual, I actually could not relate a lot to conversations around gender inequality, because growing up, I was raised by a very strong mom, and she was the boss in the house. So I myself could relate leadership with women. In high school, there were more girls than boys in our class. Same to university. My best lecturer was a woman. So I couldn't relate so much. But when I began my career in conservation, and mostly I focus on a people-centered approach to conservation, meaning you work closely with the communities living near protected areas so that they can continue ensuring that the environment is safe for habitat for wildlife. And one of the things we do is conduct conservation education, where you go to schools, you engage with the students. And so my light bulb came in when I went to one of the schools while working in south of Kenya. And I realized that out of a school of 350 students, there were only 20 girls. And only 2 girls in grade 8, which is the highest grade in primary school. So to me, that was really something baffling, because I had not experienced it in my life. And that's where now my passion for ensuring that this gender equality came in. Now, while engaging with the students, after a month or so, one of the two girls who was actually in grade 8 came to us, and she claimed that her father wanted to marry her off. So that really triggered me, and we decided to investigate further. So we went to the mothers, and we asked them, why is it that girls are dropping out? And they couldn't talk to us. They directed us to the fathers. So we had the conversation with the fathers, and we sat them down, and we asked genuinely, because in my head, I thought this is a cultural thing, where girls are not allowed to learn. But to our surprise, the fathers were very open, and they said, we love our daughters, but it's a decision that we have made because we need to survive. For example, one of the girls is called Waziri. So the father lost all his cattle and goats during a prolonged drought. Of course, the effects of climate change. And when that happened, he has to make decisions to survive. So it was either one, the girl drops out of school and stays at home, and staying at home will probably lead to her getting pregnant and then adding baggage to the father, or he marries her off as soon as possible. So after we understood this, we approached him and we engaged and we told him, okay, if that's the case, then if we solve this issue, if we solve this financial issue for you, will you allow the girl to study? Will you allow the girl to go back to school? And he said yes. You know, so that really shifted my mindset, whereby it's not always a cultural issue when it comes to early marriages. Sometimes, and I might say most of the times, it's a financial issue. And that really had a very good ripple effect, because 5 years later, right now, the girl is in college. She's studying nursing.
Great.
Yeah. Thank you. And I feel it completely changed everything, because the father of the girl, he calls himself the chair lady of Maasai women. Oh. So, so every meeting that he goes to where women are not allowed to come in, he's there to represent the women. Every meeting that he goes to where girls are not allowed to speak, he's there to represent the women. And I think sometimes just understanding the problems that the communities are facing and meeting them and trying to solve them will actually really, really help in advancing our targets of gender equality. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing this story, Annette. And yeah, and reminds us, even though there are some cultural norms, they can't be changed. And I think it's important also to look at the norms. We need to face the fact that boys and girls are getting different messages, I mean, all over, in all cultures, both from the society and from the social media, has been discussed, the expectations, and you were talking about success. I think we all want to be successful. That's just in our nature, survival of the fittest. But then I think it's important to explore what is success, who is successful, what is it to be strong and ambitious, surviving? And I think that's different message that boys and girls are getting. And I remember when I was in Australia at a conference, there was this Aboriginal man who said, in our language, success is connection. And we talked about a lot of connections and lack of connection. And if you just think about it, how would the world look like if success was like understood as connection? Yeah. So we also heard yesterday that our boys, they are lonely, they're isolated, they're lacking connection. But we heard that if you care about boys, they will care about you. And boys can love and care and be connected. That was something that was shared yesterday. So I just want to hear from you. How can we change that? And also, if we start with you, Dominik, what is it to be successful? How do we explore? How we are exploring that? How can we change that? I mean, that the boys are not just going after the things that are looked at as successful. I mean, if that is what you're paid for, and so we do, when we mentioned, we pay people more for taking care of money than taking care of people. There are more women who are in the unpaid care and the care where there's less. But how can we change those cultures and those norms? What are your
I'll share my personal observation, because I would have answered that question last year very differently from now, because I was on my personal learning journey, and I think we had a wonderful event at the United Nations General Assembly in September with the Reykjavik Global Forum and the wonderful Mona and many others here discussing exactly this reframing. And last year I would have said, success is when half of all the boards are occupied by women, and when women take their fair shares, and as Mona said it earlier in her power talk, own the goddamn pond and not just know how to fish. And I still stand by that. Yeah. I think I'm more nuanced now. I think the one thing I realize is, and I want to thank and shout out to Equimundo and all the others, part of that came from a personal anger and frustration. So for those of you who don't know, my wonderful husband is here, so I'm coming from the LGBTIQ community. And there was a lot of anger vis-a-vis, the traditional cis heteronormative white male narrative that also dominated my life. And I think I'm coming to the realization that we're all human beings, and I think you put it beautifully, that we all want to be loved, and if we're loved, we can love back. Mm-hmm. So my definition of success is, let's recognize that.
Yeah. Thank you.
Beautiful. I love the success is connection. I would say success is care and mutual respect and this sense of rising together. Just connecting an individual point to a structural one is the thing that really troubles me is what you, Dóra, mentioned about the possibility of a war or this zero-sum game. Perhaps the thing that upsets me the most is the pitting of people against each other, and especially young women and young men right now who are being persuaded that their problem is the other, right? I do think it's true both ways, and what we want is young men and women, shoulder to shoulder, actually fighting for better structures, better systems, but we're persuading them that the problem lies at the individual level rather than at the structural and institutional level. So I was a stay-at-home father for a while, and I still felt like a provider, and it was important to me to be a provider, just in a very different way. And the thing that, of course, if you take time out, because of the way you invest in care, you pay a price in the labour market. Yeah. We can make that price less for men and for women. But what you want is a world where both men and women and people of all genders, all identities, are working together to make the systems, this is your work, Dóra, around well-being, promote everybody's well-being, that we rise together. There are so many forces now from all sides, I would say, trying to persuade people that their enemy is someone next to them in their classroom or their company. We want representation, we want equal respect, and we want this idea that we rise together, and we have to stand against the forces that are trying to divide us, including by gender. And one way to do that is to, I love your story, is to just show that empathy and respect are not finite goods. They can expand to include everybody.
Thank you. Would you like to add something to that?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think success is relative, and success changes. The definition must change because traditionally, for let's say a Maasai warrior, success would be killing a lion. Yeah, as a rite of passage, right? Success would be maybe marrying 5 wives. Yeah. That was the past, right? Yeah. Right now, the Maasai men and women are the ones actually protecting the lions, get? So they are the ones living close to the lions, yeah? So to me, I think success also needs to grow, needs to advance. And I feel right now, I will define success in a way that if we are able to actually get financing for grassroots organizations, especially women and girls, because they know the challenges they are facing and they know the solutions that are there. If we're able to get financing down to the grassroots, for example, success might be maybe turning a 6-hour journey to fetch water into a 10-minute activity, because that 6-hour journey will make a girl not go to school because he has to spend the whole day going for water. Success will be ensuring that there's a well outside her home to ensure that she gets access to water. To me, that is success. To me, success is ensuring that there is opportunities for those who want to study and finances doesn't intervene with that. So success would be ensuring that as we sit here, as we talk in a global level, just ensure that our impact trickles down to the grassroots level where the people are really feeling the effects of gender inequality and also climate change.
Thank you so much. This will be just the final words. I would just like to say, I think I'm optimistic, and I feel hope, and I thank you for bringing hope to this discussion in to this world where we do face a lot of challenges, and we know we're not able to work through those challenges unless we do together. So thank you for being here and share this and give us hope for that if we connect and if we focus on how we can all thrive, being loved, seen and cared for, we will have a better world. Thank you so much.
Thank you.